What the fuck? What the fuck? Yeah. Man, this your boy. Big up Jacoby the greatest. Big up Jacoby the man. Big up Jacoby the Yo. What up, man? How y'all folks doing, man? I just got out of work, goddamn me, yeah, man. I'm cooling though. Shit, but check. We for the watch. Yeah, man. We for the watch Detroit Outlaw biker game. I've been watching biker content on my free time. I don't know why the fuck I keep watching this YouTube shit. My bad, I got the hiccups. On my free time. I just got out of work. I ain't take no shot yet. Grind on stop. I'm finna hop on the YouTube shit. Bow! What the fuck you talking about? Hey, like I say, make sure y'all like and comment. You know, really comment. I like the comments. I like the likes. I like the subs. Which one I like most out of 3? I don't know, bro. Fuck that shit. They get it on, man. Let's see what the fuck they got down going on this bitch, boy. Boy, look, he look tough. Let's see what's going on.
We gonna do what we gonna do, because we some outlaws.
In the early...
Hold on. He gonna tell y'all what's going on. This is story. This is channel. He said the deepest betrayal, unmasking, Detroit's outlaw biker club. Yeah, I know. I agree.
Morning hours of October 4th, 2013, a task force led by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives gathered outside of a small brick house on Edinburgh Road.
That is little.
Their target was a man named Marvin Nicholson,
That is
a lifelong Detroit resident who worked as a bartender, but was also involved in an escalating
I heard
conflict
Detroit get
involving
wicked.
groups of outlaw motorcycle
I ain't lying to
clubs
you.
throughout the Midwest.
The Midwest. I was just about to say that. I'm my bad from pausing. But let's be honest. I'm from the South. Yeah. But it's something about the Midwest. It's something about the Midwest. They got Chicago, in Minneapolis or some shit like right north of Chicago. They got Gary. They got Cleveland. They got Detroit. I mean, it's a crazy mix of cities. The Midwest got a lot of crazy cities up there, man. A lot of crazy cities up there, man.
West. The agents loudly announced their presence, then tossed a flashbang grenade into the home and used a battering ram to bust down the door. As they were charging in to make arrests, the agents heard 4 loud pops coming from a bedroom. They pressed on and arrested a mostly nude Nicholson, but later discovered 4 fresh bullets that were stopped by a door frame near Nicholson's room. While he would later claim that he believed that he was being targeted by robbers, not cops, Nicholson had grabbed one of 3 guns found inside the residence and fired in the direction of federal agents. It turned out that the raid on Nicholson's home...
What is the case? Hold on, my bad. What's the case looking like on that, though? Let me know. If the police busting your car, busting your house, right? And you shoot back thinking, oh shit, I don't know. I was asleep. I didn't hear them say police. I was asleep. I got heard the doom. The dope bops in. That's all I heard. Doom. Oh shit. Doom. I'm the only one live here. I obviously hear the footsteps. Wow. What? I'll be looking around like, what the fuck going on? But shit.
Was one of a series of ATF-led raids around Michigan that day, all with one purpose in mind: to take down the Phantom Motorcycle Club, a self-described group of outlaw riders who organized underground parties, interstate motorcycle runs, and held themselves up as the toughest MC among the handful that existed in Detroit and the surrounding communities. While the Phantoms would later insist that they were nothing more than a group of like-minded barroom brawlers who formed friendships over their mutual love of the open road, the ATF had other ideas. They believed that by serving search warrants on Phantoms members on October 4th, 2013, they had prevented one of the biggest biker gang massacres in United States history. But first, let's back up a bit. The Phantoms Motorcycle Club was formed in Chicago in the late 1960s, riding a nationwide wave of hundreds of motorcycle club formations that started in the early to mid 20th century. The phenomenon was created by a mix of pop culture, government policy, and an American tendency to idealize free spirits and free thinkers. In the post-World War II era, the United States government had a surplus of ground-moving equipment and would let motorcycles go for free or cheap, making them easily available to returning combat veterans seeking to fill a void. At the time, the image of the individualist, rugged biker traveling the continent was quickly replacing the cowboy as the latest cultural symbol of Western freedom.
Yep.
Ironically, the American Motorcyclist Association, hoping to combat the stigma associated with so-called outlaw bikers, publicly commented in the late 1940s that 99% of motorcycle clubs were law-abiding and upstanding citizens. Outlaw motorcycle clubs seized on this, and have been proudly referring to themselves as one-percenters ever since. The most successful one-percenter clubs, like the Hells Angels, the Mongols, and the Outlaws, have formed massive organizations propped up by support clubs, who both dominate their regions and bat off wannabe members with a stick, sometimes literally. The less successful ones live in their shadow, professing the same exclusivity as the big clubs, while walking the tightrope between needing to beef up their membership without sacrificing quality. That brings us to the city of Detroit, which in the 2010s was home to outlaw motorcycle clubs like the Phantoms, Hell Lovers, Satan's Sidekicks, and the Sin City Disciples. These groups maintained violent rivalries and tenuous peace treaties with one another as they attempted to coexist in a relatively small
one thing
community.
they go to the Disciples.
The Phantoms had an estimated 400 to 500 members nationwide, and while the Detroit chapter boasted 50 to 70 members, other chapters were struggling to make ends meet. A clubhouse, based in nearby Pontiac, for instance, only had 4 members during this time, giving little to no meaning to those who held titles like president and vice president of the chapter. The Phantoms differed from typical outlaw clubs in some key ways. They didn't strictly require members to use American model motorcycles like Harley Davidsons. Japanese models, commonly referred to as crotch rockets, were allowed. And the Phantoms were an ethnically diverse club. Like most outlaw motorcycle clubs, non-members were considered civilians and therefore lessers. Women who dated or married Phantoms were considered property. And while members included cocaine dealers, firearms stockpilers, scammers, and thieves, they were really the minority. Most of the club's members held blue-collar jobs. They were landscapers, window installers, plumbers, bartenders, and construction workers, with wives and children. But they were far from weekend warriors, and lived up to the creed that when push came to shove, loyalty to the club had to come first. As with any club, its main symbol was a patch sewn into a leather vest that delineated the club, region, and oftentimes rank of the member. In this case, their symbol included literal scythe-wielding phantoms and a tombstone to represent fallen members. Though commonly known by the slang term rag, these vests are the pride of any motorcycle club, and members are instructed to treat them like their own skin. When Phantom members stole rags from rival clubs, they would hang them upside down inside their clubhouse on what was known as the dead wall, an ultimate sign of disrespect. When one member of the Phantom's rags were stolen by his own girlfriend, their national president gave him an ultimatum. Either get your rags back or get hospitalized trying to get them back. When it came to conflicts with other biker clubs in the area, the Phantoms had a big leg up. They were tied in with one of the most powerful and populous gangs in the Midwest, the Vice Lords. In fact, the Phantom's national leader was a man named Antonio Johnson, who went by Mr. Tony and Big Bro, and held the rank of 3-star general in the Vice Lords, the highest rank in the entire state of Michigan. Mr. Tony was a charismatic, outgoing man whose underground ties were well known in Detroit, something that would come in handy for the club throughout 2013, when violent conflicts seemed to dog the Phantoms at every turn. There were plenty of colorful characters in this group. Aside from Mr. Tony was his right-hand man, Marvin Nicholson, who went by Chosen One, and another close friend named Stephen Shoeboots Caldwell, a man who held presidential rank in the Phantoms, but was also a very well-liked and respected member, and who also had ties to the Vice Lords. Then there was Carl Fats Miller, the Detroit chapter president in 2013, who had one of the most important roles in the club. Miller was an expert motorcycle thief who bragged he could steal a bike in under a minute. Along with fellow Phantom Maurice Moe Williams, Miller possessed Harley-Davidson master keys, which they used to rip off hundreds of bikes. When the master key wasn't available, he would just find a van or a trailer, roll the motorcycle into it, and take off. He even stole one from his own neighbor, a member of the Vigilante Motorcycle Club, who bragged to Miller about how he could leave his bike in his driveway without problems because people in Detroit were wary of the vigilantes. But Miller's sticky fingers caught up with him in May 2013 in Macomb County, Michigan, when he and a phantom named Brian P.C. Sorrell were arrested for using a van to steal a motorcycle from an apartment complex. And when police found a gun in P.C.'s van, Miller was charged with possessing it. Miller was angry that he was being blamed for P.C.'s gun, and it was just the latest time he felt slighted. Less than a year earlier, in June 2012, he'd been ordered to retrieve the vest of a dropout Phantom member named Dirty Red. Miller had tried to obey the order, but was set up, shot in the stomach, and ended up in a coma at the hospital for over a month. Miller was bothered that no one retaliated against Dirty Red, even more so that once he'd been shot, the issue of retrieving the vests seemed to dissipate and no one else had even tried to get them back. Now, with the threat of prison time looming, Miller offered to negotiate his way out of the situation by becoming a government snitch. Coincidentally, at that very moment, an ATF special agent named Jared Marsh was working to build a case against the Phantoms and badly needed an insider. Miller agreed to secretly record his friends committing crimes, and he got right to it. With this agreement, Marsh had stumbled onto a bit of luck that is rare in the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, which pride themselves on vetting members so as to prevent exactly these types of betrayals and infiltration. One notable example of the difficulties federal authorities have came around the same time as these events, in Denver, Colorado, where the FBI was attempting to break into the Hell's Lovers Motorcycle Club with an undercover agent. The agent thought he was making some headway into the investigation when he was angrily approached at a Hell's Lovers party. One member accused him of being a Fed, point blank, and gave him 3 options to prove otherwise: ingest cocaine, smoke marijuana, or perform a sex act on a prostitute at the party. That brings us to the late summer of 2013, when tensions between the Satan sidekicks and the Phantoms were reaching a boiling point. The sidekicks made things even worse by refusing to meet with Mr. Tony. So, in response, he issued a decree for the Phantoms to find Satan sidekicks and steal their vests whenever possible. This led to a number of increasingly violent incidents, including an attempted robbery at a gas station, where 2 Phantom members named Christopher Odom and Old Burger allegedly beat a sidekicks member so badly that his head swelled.
Already hella gangster just on the street.
Then there was an incident at a party thrown by the Hell Lovers, ironically intended to ease tensions between hobbyist and outlaw motorcycle clubs in the area. The Phantoms crashed the party, dragged a Satan sidekick into a back room, and with guns drawn formed a line, blocking Hell Lovers away from the back area, while multiple Phantoms beat the sidekick to a pulp. The Phantoms were never afraid to throw their weight around. And just 1 year prior, in October 2012, a Michigan Phantom had shot and wounded 2 Zulus motorcycle club members at a party in Columbus, Ohio.
I ain't gonna lie. Them bitches hard than a motherfucker. I ain't lie. They got some hard patches. I ain't gonna lie. Or whatever you call it. That shit hard.
Now, once again, things were quickly escalating to the point where lethal violence would come into play. Then, on September 8th and 9th, 2013, a group of Phantoms set out to the clubhouse of a motorcycle club called the Soul Devils, hopeful that they'd find a Satan sidekick there. The large group included Miller, who would later paint himself out to be a hapless bystander, but who other club members would later accuse of basically organizing the entire thing. Others there included Roger Valdez, aka June, and PC, the man Miller had been caught stealing a motorcycle with in the previous May. At any rate, in the early morning of September 9th, the group spotted a Sidekicks member named Leon McGee exiting the clubhouse with his wife. It just so happened that June had exited Miller's truck to urinate when McGee exited, and he promptly ran up to McGee and threw a punch at his head. The much bigger McGee barely reacted to the blow, but soon the entire group of sidekicks jumped on McGee and began pummeling him while his wife screamed at them a few feet away. McGee's wife carried a machete, and McGee yelled at her to, quote, grab that. But when he did, Miller interpreted the remark as McGee asking his wife to reach for a firearm. Miller began to yell, gun, gun, and his fellow Phantoms responded. PC and June drew their own guns, and McGee pulled out his own knife and began to slash. In the fracas that ensued, PC was stabbed in the stomach, and McGee was shot. Bullets hit him in the face and forearm, and he fell back into his truck, while his wife took the wheel and peeled out towards the nearest trauma center. Meanwhile, the Phantoms began to look after their own wounded comrade, and headed off to the very same hospital, where PC would end up admitted just a few doors down from where McGee was being treated. While McGee's wounds were serious, he somehow survived. PC made it through the night as well, but soon everyone would blame Miller for how things went down. June would later describe how he showed up late to a Phantoms meeting, where Mr. Tony was absolutely laying into Miller for the plan going awry. Miller was scrambling to defend himself, and when he saw June, he almost reflexively started pointing fingers, telling Tony that June had, quote, jumped the gun by punching McGee before the others were ready. June spoke up. You know what, man? I shot the dude in the face, he said, though he'd later claimed that he'd actually fired in the air, and that was PC who shot McGee. For his part, McGee would later identify PC from a police photo lineup as the man who shot him. Miller wasn't done facing the music either. Before the Phantoms yelled at him, he had to hear about it from the ATF.
He got
Marsh blamed him for allowing the situation to get out of hand and endangering lives, then informed Miller the feds had come up with a solution. They outfitted him with a GPS tracking device and instructed him to inform the Phantoms that he'd been ordered to wear one by a judge in his motorcycle theft prosecution, and that if he was ever invited to go rob sidekicks for their vests again, he was to use his new ankle monitor as an excuse to avoid it. A little less than 3 weeks later, tragedy struck. Phantom members Stephen Shoeboots Caldwell and Andre He-Man Swift were riding motorcycles through Detroit when a Chevy Tahoe pulled alongside them, and at least one shooter, probably two, opened fire from behind. Swift was injured, but the bullet that struck Caldwell went through his back, into his abdomen, striking internal organs and killing him. It was an enormous blow to the Phantoms, who lost one of their most beloved members and were enraged that the killers had snuck up on them and shot them in the back. Out of everyone, the shooting was perhaps most devastating to Mr. Tony, who was a lifelong friend of Shoeboots and viewed him as a baby brother. In a call to Carl Miller just hours after the shooting, while Caldwell was still on life support, Tony confided in Miller that he was beside himself with grief. Later, when Caldwell passed away, the two spoke on the phone again, tears streaming down his face as he lamented in a rare moment of vulnerability, "We bleed too." Miller consoled his friend, telling Tony, "You know, no matter what, I do love you, bro." "I love you too," Tony replied. Meanwhile, on the other side of the line, Miller had been recording everything with a device given to him by the ATF. In his moment of grief, Tony continued to talk. "Just woke up a giant," he said, referring to Shoeboots killers. Then he added, "I need 10 of them, bro, and it still won't be enough for me. You know what I'm saying?" But according to the ATF, this wasn't just talk. Within a matter of days, Mr. Tony, Chosen One, and a host of other Phantoms started laying down the groundwork for a mass murder retaliation plot. Through his own investigation and ties with the Vice Lords, Tony had determined that it was not the Satan sidekicks, as everyone assumed, but the Hell Lovers who had killed Shoeboots. Rather than strike back immediately, they decided to wait until after Shoeboots' funeral, knowing that the memorial service would be a time and place where the Phantoms would be extremely vulnerable to possible violent retaliation if they were to kill a Hell Lovers member beforehand. But that precaution gave them an idea. Soon, a plan was hatched to kill 2 to 3 Hell Lovers in ambush-style attacks, then arm themselves in preparation for the funeral, where they would wait for Hell Lovers to gather and then go at them a second time in the hopes of killing any number of people who showed up to mourn the fallen members. After that, there was even talk of traveling across state lines to Tennessee and killing Hell Lovers across the country. Miller learned of the plot, and while his ankle monitor restricted the number of Phantoms meetings he could now attend, he had other attendees to tell him what had occurred, recording as they spoke. After noting that several members appeared to be stockpiling weapons, discussing specific addresses of Hell Lovers members to kill, and that one had secured a stolen van to possibly use in a shooting, the ATF moved in with the October 4th, 2013 raids across Michigan, rounding up Mr. Tony, Chosen One, PC, June, Christopher Odom, Mo Williams, and a grand total of 14 Phantoms members, charged with racketeering crimes ranging from weapons violations to the alleged murder plot.
14.
Before long, Mo Williams, June, and Phantom member Vicente Ghost Phillips took plea deals and agreed to testify, joining Miller on the witness stand for the trial of Chosen One, Mr. Tony, PC,
14.
Sherman Brown, Matthew Arsenal Shamit, Brian Jackson, and Charles Davis. All were charged with murder conspiracy, save Arsenal, who was solely accused of living up to his nickname by stockpiling firearms for the Phantoms. The group went to trial in 2015, and Miller spent more than a week on the stand, playing his secret recordings for the judge and jury, while men he'd professed to love sat a few feet away from the defendant's chair. To the defense attorneys, this was a classic example of a manufactured case, where Miller had not only elicited statements from people who were grieving a loved one and probably didn't mean what they were saying, but who'd set the events of September 8th and 9th into motion so that the ATF could have a violent act to throw at the Phantoms in court. Defense attorney Michael Radich, rife with sports analogies, said the alleged plot to rob sidekicks for their vests was nothing more than a little roughhousing between clubs, akin to football fans having a fist fight in the stands of a game, then making up later. And he'd argue that even if the crimes were proven, the defendants couldn't be guilty of racketeering, because one of the requirements was to prove the Phantoms were a criminal organization, which they weren't. He argued, 4 out of 5 might be a good day for Miguel Cabrera at the plate, but 4 out of 5 doesn't cut it in terms of the government getting a conviction against these defendants. But the prosecution countered with a notebook seized during the investigation, which contained a set of rules for the Phantoms Motorcycle Club. It left little doubt to what side of the law the Phantoms saw themselves on. Quote, "Phantoms are an outlaw motorcycle club, period. Phantoms will remain as an outlaw motorcycle club at all times." At the trial's end, while the jury was technically split, they leaned heavily against the Phantoms. Everyone was convicted except for Charles Davis, who ironically was the only defendant who had a prior homicide conviction for killing a neighbor, who ironically, and while the motorcycle club at all times.
I'm gonna pause it right here. He should have just said, "We just a motorcycle club. We just a motorcycle club." You ain't gotta say outlaw motorcycle club, but it is a difference. Ain't it? You ain't gotta say outlaw. You gotta say we got a motorcycle club. We ain't no outlaw motorcycle club. We just a motorcycle club.
Times. At the trial's end, while the jury was technically split, they leaned heavily against the Phantoms. Everyone was convicted except for Charles Davis, who ironically was the only defendant who had a prior homicide conviction for killing a neighborhood bully when he was just 16 years old. Davis had made allegedly incriminating statements while under the influence of prescribed medication at Shuboot's funeral, and had never followed up on his offer to supply the Phantoms with Uzis. All that was left now was for U.S. District Judge Paul Borman to pronounce the sentence. Typically in this situation, defendants are encouraged to show remorse, as that can sway judges a great deal towards leniency, especially in cases like this where no one was killed. By and large, the Phantoms didn't do that, and they stuck by their contention that this was a manufactured case brought about by a desperate turncoat. But their refusal probably added years to their prison terms. With prosecutors reminding Borman he'd fired during the ATF raid, Chosen One was given 40 years in federal prison.
Damn.
Mr. Tony was given 35.
Damn.
Brian P.C. Sorrell was sentenced to 21 years for shooting Leon McGee, and the remainder were given prison terms approaching a decade. Out of all those who took their case to trial, perhaps no one better articulated their predicament better than Brian Jackson, who stood in court and recounted all he'd done for the community. At 48, he'd spent his life literally building Detroit as a construction worker, claimed he never engaged in violence, and was convicted of conspiracy for telling Miller, his chapter president, what went on in a meeting where Mr. Tony had outlined the murder plot. He wasn't just the government's confidential informant. He was the president of Detroit. When he come in and asked me what he said at the meeting, I told the man. I didn't add nothing to it. I didn't take anything away from it. I gave the man what was said at the meeting, and here I am. Judge Borman sentenced him to 8 years.
At least he got something. Ooh. 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 Hey man, stay out the streets, bro. Don't gang bang. Stay home. Stay with the girl if she cool. Stay out the streets, nigga. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do that. No. Stay home, folks. Go to work. Hustle. Yeah, man. You got kids. Just focus on your kids. Focus on your girl if you cool with it. But shit, if y'all ain't cool, shit, it is what it is. But if y'all cool, focus on her too, shit. Yeah, man. Don't be in this bitch gang banging. Don't get in these streets. Don't do none of that shit, nigga. Big LG Kobe telling y'all this. And guess what? I'm out this hoe. Yeah, man. But I'll make another video. That's for sure. See y'all later, man. Peace.